I started out intending simply to write a stripped-down ritual that could easily be used while traveling. Along the way it morphed into something that was still good for travelers, but was a lot more. I've noticed from my reading and from watching YouTube videos that there was something important that was missing from many Wiccan rituals, something that was a normal part of training and practice in the early days of Wicca, but seems to have slipped through the cracks for many people. What I am seeing is lots of rituals to get something by magic, or celebrate the seasons, or cast circles, or honor the god and the goddess. These are all good reasons to practice ritual, but there's much more that can be done. What I'm not seeing are many rituals deliberately intended to bring about self-transformation. Rituals of self-transformation can be an end in themselves, to make someone a better person, but it's also a requirement if we are to conduct other kinds of rituals most effectively. Wicca has traditionally done this through balancing the four classical elements in oneself: air, fire, water, and earth, often with the addition of the spirit that combines and enlivens them, and by means of which they manifest themselves. They are intended to represent all the ways that something can be, so by balancing them, a Wiccan becomes balanced in all ways. First you have to know what they are, though, so the goals of the ritual. This is a very basic ritual then, but not one that you can finish with. Continued work with it will result in a deepening of your understanding. If you're just starting out in Wicca, I recommend doing it for a while, maybe for several months or more, to build a strong foundation before going on to more advanced work. If you're impatient to get on with more exciting stuff, bear in mind that this will actually save you time in the long run. Even if you're experienced, you can profit by doing this regularly. Everyone can benefit by going back to the basics from time to time. Once you've mastered this ritual, you can go on to the others I'll be putting links for in the description as I post them. They will be based on this one, but go beyond them to worship the god and goddess and to experience their great mystery. You should have a firm understanding of this ritual and success in achieving its goals before going on to them, however, or you won't get as much out of them as you could. When I say that this ritual involves the essence of the elements, I mean the elements in their purest forms, those which are beyond and before any manifestations. That's why I've used the traditional elemental symbols rather than more physical forms. For instance, people often use a shell as a symbol for the element water. But a shell is much more than pure water. It contains a large amount of earth in its firmness and in the minerals. When I say that this ritual involves the essence of the elements, I mean the elements in their purest forms, those which are beyond and before any manifestations. That's why I've used the traditional elemental symbols rather than more physical forms. For instance, people often use a shell as a symbol for the element water. But a shell is much more than pure water. It contains a large amount of earth in its firmness and in the minerals it is composed of. Using the traditional symbols makes it possible to experience the elements just as they are, with only a pure and abstract symbol between you and them. I've painted these symbols on wooden discs that I bought in a craft shop. Making them all the same shape and size and of the same material further prevents extraneous factors from interfering with your experience of them in their purest form. I had to paint them in some color, of course, so I used one of the traditional color schemes. Color is still fairly abstract, so it won't get in the way of the purity of your experience. Putting them on these discs has the practical benefit of making them easy to carry around. Not only is this an advantage for traveling, it also means you can carry them with you during the day even when you're not. This keeps you aware of them and increases their working in you. You can also put them into a bag or small tin and slip them into your pocket or purse. You can see that for the spirit symbol I've used a circle with a dot in it. This is to symbolize the spirit as within and without. Other possible symbols are a pentagram, which stands for the four elements tied together, and a circle with a cross in it, again to show them united. You start the ritual facing north, which means that if you're on a trip, you'll need to bring a compass with you. The reason you want to face north is because you'll be arranging the discs at the beginning so that they go left to right, and that will start in the east and going clockwise around the space. You start by taking out the discs, putting the bag to one side, and then turning the discs over. Don't put them in any order, because one of the points of the ritual is to change disorder into order. So you want to start out with some disorder. First you're going to want to purify yourself. And in this ritual you're going to be doing that through the elements themselves. So starting with air, place it down, touch your fingers to it to make the connection with the element, and say, by the power of air, may I be made pure to perform the sacred. And then you touch your forehead or your lips or your heart, depending on what part of your body you're thinking of emphasizing being purified. You can touch them all if that seems appropriate. You then go through all of the elements, placing them in a line. As you do each of the elements, imagine that element purifying you. So, for instance, the air would be blowing away everything impure, the fire would be burning it away, the water would be washing it away. Earth is a little more difficult because we generally think of earth as being fairly passive. You could think of it as rubbing purifications away, as if it were grains of salt being rubbed against yourself. Once you have the 4 elements done, you are now ritually pure. So now you put the spirit token next to them and touch it and say, now become pure, I may call on the pure. And what I mean by calling on the pure is calling on the elements, because we're going to be calling on them in their purest forms. As I said in the introduction, we're not talking about manifestations of the elements, but the raw elements themselves. Start with air in the east. May air be here, the wet and the warm, pure and unmixed. May I live in its presence and under its influence. You notice I say wet and warm. That's because in the classical element system, the elements are divided into wet and dry and warm and cold. So air is wet and warm, fire is dry and warm, water is wet and cold, and earth is dry and cold. So you can think of these as part of the system that you're trying to envision, and you ask yourself, in what way do these relate to each other? So you go about the space, calling each element in turn. So may fire be here, the dry and the warm, pure and unmixed, may I live in its presence and under its influence. May water be here, the wet and the cold, pure and unmixed, may I live in its presence, under its influence. May earth be here, the dry and the cold, pure and unmixed, may I live in its presence and under its influence. Now it's time for the spirit. Spirit being that which combines everything, it goes in the center. Spirit girds me about, the protecting circle of air and fire and water and earth. And then you finish it by touching the air again so as to complete the space, and then go back to here. Spirit dwells within me, the eternal center of air and fire and water and earth. Enclosed and enclosing, without and within, the perfect mixing of the unmixed 4. Now continue to touch the spirit token while you meditate on the spirit. In this case, what you want to do is envision each of the elements combining into the spirit, and the spirit breaking apart to form the elements. Think of it as a relationship between the colors of the rainbow and the white light. The spirit being the white light, which can either be made from combining colors, or once you have the white light, you can break it apart to form the colors. Envision them individually, and then try to hold all of them in your head at one time and see how they relate to each other. This is an incredibly important part of the ritual, because here's the point when you're going to be meditating on the balance. You can also think at this point of what each of the elements symbolizes in various categories, and particularly what they symbolize in categories in your life. For instance, air is connected with things having to do with the mind, clear thought, speech, reading, writing. Ask yourself with each of them, am I as good as I can be in this particular area?
and choose which ones, if there are any, that you feel like you should be better at, and think about it, meditate on the element and how you can be better at it. For instance, with air, you can read better books. You can learn how to research, learn how to tell what better books are. You can learn laws of logic so you can think more clearly. You can expose yourself to more and different points of view, and so on. This is part of the whole point of balancing yourself and self-transformation that the ritual is intended to bring about. The goal, ultimate goal, is to be perfectly balanced in yourself, as complete as you can be. So this is the point where that kind of meditation takes place. When I go through the ritual without commenting on it, I'll just do this for a second or two because watching somebody meditate is pretty boring. When you're done with that, you pray. Through the mediation of the Spirit, may the four be balanced within me. May I be whole and complete, fit for what I will face. To the Spirit that encloses, to the Spirit enclosed, may this be done. Now it's time to take your circle apart. You're going to be starting with the last one you put in place and then going counterclockwise. So you've set something up and now you're unrolling it again. Touch it. May the power of earth continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. Touch it yourself. Put it in the bag. May the power of water continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. May the power of fire continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. May the power of air continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. You're left with the Spirit, which at this point includes everything that you've just taken away. So everything is actually still there, just combined in the Spirit. It is through the power of Spirit that this work is done. May the power of Spirit do this work in me throughout this day and all my days and all of my life. Now you hold the bag to your heart. You say, it is done, it is done, it is well done. The work is well done in me and will continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. If you're used to adding something like so mote it be, then that's the point at which you'll do it. And the ritual is done. Now, as I said in the introduction, you can carry this with you through your day. You can keep it in your pocket, you can put it in a purse. It's good if you touch it frequently to remind you of what's going on and to connect yourself with the magic that you've stored in it. So now I'm going to go through it without commenting on it so you can see how it works on its own. By the power of air, may I be made pure to perform the sacred. By the power of fire, may I be made pure to perform the sacred. By the power of water, may I be made pure to perform the sacred. By the power of earth, may I be made pure to perform the sacred. Now become pure, I may call on the pure. May air be here, the wet and the warm, pure and unmixed. May I live in its presence and under its influence. May fire be here, the dry and the warm, pure and unmixed. May I live in its presence and under its influence. May water be here, the wet and the cold, pure and unmixed. May I live in its presence and under its influence. May earth be here, the dry and the cold, pure and unmixed. May I live in its presence and under its influence. Spirit girds me about, the protecting circle of air and fire and water and earth. Spirit dwells within me, the eternal center of air and fire and water and earth. Enclosed and enclosing, without and within, the perfect mixing of the unmixed four. Through the mediation of the Spirit, may the four be balanced within me. May I be whole and complete, fit for what I will face. Through the Spirit that encloses, through the Spirit enclosed, may this be done. May the power of earth continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. May the power of fire continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. May the power of fire continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. May the power of air continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. It's through the power of Spirit that this work is done. May the power of Spirit do this work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. It is done, it is done, it is well done. The work is well done in me and will continue to work in me throughout this day and all of my days and all of my life. So let it be. And there you go. A simple ritual you can do every day. You can easily do on trips, and that will continue to work in you throughout your days and all of your days and all of your life. Thank you.